Anthony's first ballot, not
Yep.
Eli Manning.
All guests on 95.7 The Game appear on the River Islands guest line. Is it a time for you to discover the islands, River Islands, and Lathrop? Slates, Happy New Year to you, my man. You probably were were you in Sacramento last night, cover the Kings and the Sixers? Oh, wait, we got to pot him up. Where's Slates?
Oh, no, Slates.
What's up?
Oh, he's
there
back
he is.
now. He was in the Twilight Zone for a second.
We didn't hear a thing there. Maybe it was on our end. Were you in Sac last night, cover the Kings and Sixers?
Yep, I was at the game.
So we get the Sixers tonight at Chase Center. So we'll get your thoughts on them and the new look Kings with Doug Christie. They in the game on a 15-0 run. Very riveting stuff at the Go to One Center. But let's talk some Warriors here as they dropped to 16-16 on Monday night. And again, Happy New Year to you. Where are the Warriors at right now, other than being 16-16 and 8-8 at home? The trade deadline's coming up February 6th. Do you believe, as you take a lens to the Golden State Warriors, and you're looking at this roster after they start 12-3, what is on the table? Is anything on the table in terms of trades, roster movement? What's your take on the Warriors right now, Slates?
Yeah, I mean, certainly stuff's on the table. I mean, it's going to, this will be a hot topic of conversation mid-January into early February, deadline time. But clearly they're searching. The fact that they even made the Schröder trade morning one when trades were eligible should indicate something to you there. And I think what they do over the next few weeks is probably going to dictate, how aggressive or non-aggressive the front office is when it comes down to it.
Anthony, we're talking about like New Year's resolutions, right? Like it's just the time of the year. It's just what can some of these Bay Area franchises do right now? The word we kept coming back to with the Golden State Warriors is identity. I would like for them to, solidify like who are they as a team? And how would you answer that? If someone asked you right now, Anthony, to describe the Golden State Warriors, like who are they?
What Steph called them average the other day?
Mid.
Yeah, both words. He used both. Yeah, I mean, they honestly haven't been average in the last few weeks. They've been well below average. I mean, their offense is basically like, Wizards Hornets level. I do believe that they are, play in, maybe with the right move, with kind of, an improving rotation, just better shooting percentages from guys historically who can, that they could maybe bump up towards 6 seed type, which is to me is the goal, right? Get in the playoffs, firmly in the playoffs. But I don't think they're there right now. But who are they? They're a fading giant that, is in year 4 of like a kind of a slow fade, while also obviously trying to build up this younger core below them. And they're struggling a little bit to do that. So, we kind of don't know who they are because they've kind of been this for a while now.
Right. Warriors Insider here Warriors Insider for The Athletic. Also part of the Odyssey family, Anthony Slater on 95.7 The Game Insider on all things Warriors and all things NBA. All right, so let's get to Schröder first, and then we'll get to JK, TJD, and some of the youngsters and what may happen over the next 5 weeks. Schröder, so far, the fit hasn't looked great, right? He comes from a high usage situation in Brooklyn. He's got the ball in his hands. It sticks. That's his game. He hasn't played in this system under Steve Kerr before, and he's struggling to start. He had the big 3 against Phoenix with $1:23 left in the game Saturday night, but overall, the returns haven't been that great. What's your take on Dennis Schröder and the addition here with the Golden State Warriors?
He's making 29% of his shots through 7 games, which is, that's one of the worst, like, subsections, small samples of his career. Like, we know that is going to correct just because historically, what is he, year 12 now? He's not, nobody's that poor a shooter, especially like a higher volume type shooter. So he'll make more threes, he'll make more shots. And that will, just generally make him look better. I've been impressed with him defensively. I do think he's kind of as advertised as a pest on that end. Clearly, they're pretty committed to, making him one of their like real core, I would say the core 6 members of the rotation, which is the starting lineup now, which is Steph, Schröder, Wiggins, TJD and Draymond, and then Kuminga, high usage off the bench. Like, they seem really committed to that 6, and that puts a lot of pressure on Schröder to improve because they got him to basically fill in for what Melton was supposed to be and was for 6 games when they looked so great early in the season. He's a different type of player. But they need him to score relatively efficiently, shoot the 3 much better and kind of organize and basically, remember how well the Nets were playing in, his short time there? A lot of that was due to him. leading kind of a ragtag group. They almost kind of need him to do that when Steph's off the floor, figure out a way to turn that lineup into a decent, efficient lineup with some pick and rolls with TJD, with Kuminga. And he hasn't done that yet. But honestly, I just think if 29% from the field becomes, 45%, which is pretty typical of Schröder, if whatever he is from three right now, like 20% becomes 38% or 35%, he was shooting 38 in Brooklyn. He looks like a lot better player.
Speaking of Schröder's struggles, another guy's been struggling mightily is Buddy Hield. For as good as it was, Anthony, at the start of the season, they were 12-3. It was the splash buddies. It was everything is all good. It's been just as awful with these last 15 plus games with the Buddy Hield experience. Just his shot's just not there. And I guess if he's a streaky player, that's fine. You're hoping the streak comes back around the positive end coming up here. Is there a possibility that he could be on the trading block for the Golden State Warriors here?
Yeah, sure. I'd almost say everybody besides Steph.
Oh.
Draymond is very unlikely. I would put him, single him out as number two. But, salary matching stuff matters here. And, all the guys that signed this summer are trade eligible. I mean, you saw them ship the Melton deal already. Schröder can't be moved or at least aggregated in a move until right before the deadline. But, I think everyone's kind of on the block in a sense, especially with how tight money is and how they have to be pretty creative and how they build up these deals depending on who they potentially go get. If we're talking like a Vucevic, a Kyle Kuzma, a Cam Johnson, you gotta kind of creatively get up to almost an exact number. And one of the things they do have is kind of financial flexibility in that sense of all these guys on middle level deals. And Buddy Hield's one of them. It's certainly a tradable contract. So they're going to be searching for answers and they're not just going to tie themselves to the idea that they kind of like this signing at a decent price this summer.
Anthony, and we're talking to Anthony Slater here on the Morning Rush on 95.7 Game. We do so every single week on the show. Slates, obviously, Steph is dealing with the bilateral knee tendonitis, and at times he doesn't look great. At times he does. Cleveland they're one of the best teams in the NBA, if not the best team. That looks like a championship roster right now. We'll see about them in the Eastern Conference. But Draymond Green, where is he at health-wise, physically? I know he had to quote Saturday night after the win against Phoenix where he doesn't, he's not a big fan of playing the five, but he'll do so in order to win games. But how effective is that to play him at the five for more than, say, 5 minutes at a time or more than 10 minutes at a time? Because it does feel like it will wear him down at some point this season.
I mean, it depends on the opponent, right? I mean, you mentioned that Phoenix game where he played a lot of five and Kuminga was great. He was Mason Plumlee and nobody else
right.
were the fives. He was guarding KD late, and you could be creative with the matchups. But if they're playing Denver, I don't know how much five you do want him to play. I think Trace Jackson-Davis is playing really well. Looney's always kind of in Steve Kerr's back pocket as far as Draymond's health goes. I mean, it's clear he's banged up. He's on the injury report again tonight with a lower back contusion. Expect him to play. I believe he's probable, but it just it feels like he's on the injury report 2 times a week with something minor. He's had the calf thing. Clearly, he's physically at a stage of his career that. Not even just, it's not like, it's just because he's playing center, he's, getting beat up. It's just because he's playing an 82-game marathon and, he's an undersized big in general, even when he's playing the four. And he's kind of has to guide his body through this. And typically, historically, he's been really good about managing it all the way up until playoffs and being able to kind of put the full throttle on. But as we've learned as consumers over the last, few seasons, the Warriors can try to manage their vets like Steph, like Draymond during the regular season, but if they don't put the pedal down enough in the regular season, sometimes you get to the playoffs and you're not in the playoffs. So it's kind of what they're dealing with. But the thing, they got to maximize the amount of time they can play Draymond at center and figure out the right matchups for that, or rest Draymond maybe a little bit because it's clear they got to get Kuminga on the floor. They've realized that. They seem again to be recommitting to that right now where they're getting him at least around 30 minutes. And it's just their best lineups is when Kuminga's on the floor and typically Draymond's at the five.
His shot. I want Draymond to stay aggressive offensively. I think the Warriors are at their best when he is aggressive offensively, but the shot has evaded him. What are you seeing with his offensive game lately in the month of December, Anthony?
Yeah. I think he's 9 of 34 during this little recent slide. He's not shooting the three. Well, I don't know what he's down to from three, but remember he was really hot early in the season. And that was part of their winning streak. It was you mentioned it. Buddy Hield was scoring 20 a night in 22 minutes, and Draymond was hitting threes at 43%. And, I feel fine. Like, he is who he kind of is offensively. I don't think he's looking hesitant. I just think he's not hitting it as much. Defenses are going to do what they're going to do with him, but you got to kind of just believe he is. That's who he is at this stage. You just hope he hits a couple threes because teams are going to give it to him.
Speaking of injuries and statuses, Stephen Curry dealing with a right thumb sprain. Do you expect him to play tonight, Anthony?
Yeah, I do. But it's another older player dealing with the bumps and bruises of the season. I mean, it's always possible he doesn't play tonight, but he's clearly going through some stuff physically. He's not shooting the ball that well.
Kuminga, you brought him up, and some of the youngsters, TJD's had a really good stretch since he's been reinserted back to the starting lineup in the last 6 games. He's averaging a double-double, especially coming off that game against Cleveland where he had 16. But Jonathan Kuminga, it's a big 4 weeks for him, the organization, Mike Dunleavy, Joe Lacob, Steve Kerr. When it comes to JK, now you mentioned it, they've recommitted themselves to maximizing JK. Where do you think JK's at in terms of the pecking order, in terms of his play, his long-term future to go to State Warriors? Where is JK at mentally?
I think if he's getting 30 minutes, good. You know what I mean? Like if he's getting the runway to try to prove himself in year 4, by the way, I think he's comfortable. And this is he just wants like a heavy usage. Like he feels like he's ready for that type of role in the league, and they're giving it to him currently. So I mean that would make him happy because he needs to not only financially set himself up here, but I just think he's really he loves the sport and he wants to blossom, and he thinks he's ready for that. And I think right now, at this current moment, it seems like he's been given the stage for that. The one thing I have really liked from him lately, like he's getting to the line so much right now. 14 the other night? Yep. I think if you look over the last 4 or 5 games, it's like nearly double digits every game. The efficiency kind of waxes and wanes, but I do think he's more committed right now to a healthier shot diet, right? Since Steve Kerr criticized him after the Minnesota game, where I think some of that Minnesota game was just wasn't that into the game because he had just been, yanked from the starting lineup again, and it seemed like he was going to be playing 20 minutes, and he just kind of came out and was shooting the mid-rangers. I think Steve really got on him, and, he since then it's been downhill, slashing, getting to the rim, getting to the line, and, that's an effective player. And if you kind of diagnose this little patch of the season right now, what's going right, what's going wrong for the Warriors, I think Kuminga's in the what's going right category. I mean, I know the other night he didn't shoot it that well, but nobody on the team did. He was at least trying to, he was manufacturing points by getting to the rim, getting to the line. So I like how he's playing, and I think we all agree, like at this point, they got to figure out who he is, and that means like 30-something minutes a night.
Yeah, 9, 8, 14, 12, and 14 are the free throw attempts over the last 5 games. For Jonathan Kuminga, I'm with you. When he's diving downhill, not taking the shot, the three-point shot, when it first serves him, when he first gets the ball and he's got that three-point shot, he's passing it first. I think JK's playing at a high level right now. But what is the league? From when you're talking to your insiders around the league and you're talking to your buddies, how does the league view Jonathan Kuminga? Because we view him here differently. A lot of people here in the Bay Area believe he could be the guy who could carry the franchise once Steph retires. Some people think that you need to trade him and maximize Stephen Curry. What do league insiders, how do they view Jonathan Kuminga right now, Anthony?
I mean, it's all over the map, and it feels like it changes on like a weekly basis, right? And there, I would say unknown still, which is like year 4, like entering like a very interested restricted free agency. That's like still kind of a problem, entering like a trade season where his name's going to be, kind of bounced around. But it's like, remember he enters the starting lineup with no Steph, no Draymond in L.A. Actually, he didn't even enter the starting lineup, but he played like 34 minutes off the bench and had 34 points. And I had a few scouts on the way out the door like, oh, that was interesting. It's kind of seeing him, going at Zubac late and kind of being featured. And then he did it again the next night where they were really getting him downhill, attacking bigs. And like that type of stuff at least makes people who are, there's always teams and people in the league searching for a guy who could really pop if given the right opportunity. And while I think there's skepticism at times on what he'll ultimately be from an efficiency standpoint and, in like an ultimate winning environment, there's still like a load of talent in there. And on the right nights, he really intrigues a lot of people in the league. But there's also we understand what his salary desires are. And the fact that his salary next season probably, if he has his way, is going to bump up from, single digits, like the 9-ish millions up towards, 30 beyond. Like that makes him, that makes the league kind of question whether that's worth it or not, right? Like there's somebody is going to have to take, pretty heavy, like pricey risk on him. And I think that's what everyone's trying to figure out. That's also why everyone in the league doesn't mind the fact that, hey, play him 30 minutes so we can get information on him.
Speaking of a guy who, and you said what's going right with the Golden State Warriors this season, I think another guy you can add in there is Trayce Jackson-Davis. Definitely as of late, you just look at his game log, 16 points, 15, 11, 13. He's getting 16 boards, 10 boards. He's going up against guys, albeit it was a small sample size, but against a guy like an Anthony Davis, who's he's played in the past and done pretty decently against. He's obviously had some success at times. You think of the block he had on against Giannis Antetokounmpo. You just think of a guy like Trayce Jackson-Davis and what his role could be going forward with the Golden State Warriors, Anthony. First and foremost, A, is he like a big part of their plans going forward? And B, just what have you seen from him this season?
He's starting center. I'd say like a probably top 6 minutes guy at this point. He's relieved Kevon Looney at this current moment. I think he was lower physicality, lower energy early in the season and getting pushed around a little bit inside. I think we all saw that. He wasn't running the floor with as much juice. That's changed since, really a couple weeks ago. And he's been like he didn't finish that well the other night against Cleveland's length. And that's a concern about him, right? He's 6'9". He's a little bit undersized when you go against the giants of the league, the shot blockers. But generally lately, I think he's just, he's been better, more efficient, on his finishing. And he's an intriguing player as kind of your spot starter or, high energy backup big, depending on like who your starter is. And it's fine, considering the price, they have him at like incredibly cheap, like minimum type price over the next 3 seasons of control. Like he's who you want. And honestly, he might be a guy come trade deadline that a team might be like, hey, can you toss that, contract in? Because he's a rotation big at a very reasonable number.
Anthony, I heard last week they gave you a hard time the day after Christmas.
I felt like we did, Anthony, as Spadoni, and I just felt like we were crushing the NBA right when we got on, comparing him to the NFL.
Think about these guys crushing the NBA.
Those numbers hit later that day, and they actually came out pretty well for the NBA.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, compared to the NFL games, but
But the NBA had the better day. The NBA produced the better games, Anthony.
They did, and if I don't think anybody was predicting that they were going to outrate the NFL games. Like reality is reality. They're not. Nobody can deny what the NFL is as a Goliath, but I think the NBA is having a good season. I'm intrigued on a nightly basis. I was at that Sixers Kings game last night. You mentioned it's like It's good. It's good theater. Like now we could discuss the intricacies of like the length of the schedule and some of the rules and this and that. Like sure, there's ways to nitpick, but I think the sport's in a fine place, honestly. And the TV money they just signed would indicate there's still a lot of value there.
No doubt. They're getting a lot of money for these new deals with NBC and Amazon, of course. And I do think the games have been like Sacramento to Philly last night was a good game. Cleveland and the Lakers the other night was a good game. Boston's playing well. Orlando's playing hard and playing well, and nobody cares because they're in Orlando, but they've got a good roster. I do think the NBA, the Thunder are 16-1 in their last 17. Minnesota's starting to figure it out. Dallas, you got that. Cleveland, I just mentioned it. Cleveland, Anthony, that looks like a championship team. That really does, man.
I'm still skeptical. I'm like they almost are going to have to like be holding the trophy up before I'm going to be like, yeah, you know what, maybe they are a contender. But yeah, they look awesome. One of the criticisms of the league is like, oh, well, the regular season doesn't matter, and like I get that from like maybe the casual fan isn't tuning in, tonight, for example, for Warriors Sixers. But if you're on the ground level covering this stuff like we are, like this is a big game for the Warriors tonight. Like it feels like a lot on the line. Right. I cover a Kings team that's so panicky. They just fired a coach they gave an extension to 6 months ago. Like you don't think the December regular season games matter to them? Mm-hmm. So everything feels enormous for these teams, even though it's an 82 games.
The Cleveland, I do think they need one more wing defender. That would scare me. Isaac Okoro's a good defender, but if he can't stay healthy, I need one more wing defender on that team with Kenny Atkinson. And is Mobley going to do that in a long playoff run? But I do like where Mitchell and Garland are at. There's no doubt about that. Spadoni, get in here.
Oh, just real quick, as you were covering the Kings, and you did a great job as well with Kings coverage, Anthony, with The Athletic. De'Aaron Fox, obviously, they made their bed. They picked De'Aaron, it felt like, over Mike Brown. Is that basically what it comes down to at the end of the day? No, is that not even close?
No, yeah, it was a smear campaign on De'Aaron Fox. He loved Mike Brown.
Like him and Mike were fine, and like Mike's not like believing De'Aaron, pulled the trigger on that. That was an organization that all the way up to the ownership that just made a panic move. And maybe part of the panic move is them staring at De'Aaron Fox's uncertain future and just trying to figure anything out during this regular season. But that was not them picking Mike over De'Aaron, because if I'm being honest with you, I don't think they're going to have either. In the long run.
Well, just real quick, just because I know was it you and Amick that did the piece together in regards to Rich Paul going to the games a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like what? So am I reading too much into that?
No, you're not. I mean, he's like, De'Aaron Fox is certainly peering into his future and wondering whether it should be in Sacramento or not. And I think it's that future is going to come into an uncertain focus. I could see there being rumblings. Deadline, my guess would be closer to the summer. He has that, he has another year. He's under contract, but he's already turned down their extension offers, and the way they're looking, their record, and how sustainable they look as a contender, which he wants to be in a winning environment on a consistent basis. And if he stares at his current situation, I think there's understandable skepticism that it's there. So you're not reading too much into that. There's a lot to be read into that. I would just say that may have led to the Mike Brown firing, but that wasn't because De'Aaron ordered it at all.
Got it.
DeRozan unhappy? Hey, was that rumor true about DeRozan maybe being asked to come off the bench to give them some bench depth and maybe open up the game for the starters? What's going on with DeMar DeRozan? Because I did not like that signing for Sacramento. He's a good player. I just didn't like the fit.
Yeah, he just hasn't played that well. He's older. What's it? It's like year 17, I think, for him.
Yep.
And he's smaller. They need better defense on the wing, and he certainly doesn't provide that. He'll have his nights. He's had some 20-point nights, but I mean, I was kind of skeptical of the fit early on. A lot of people were, and it's played itself out that way. It just hasn't worked that well.
All right, Anthony. Good stuff as always. I'll see you later on tonight at Chase Center. Sixers in town after a brutal loss last night, but the Warriors, they get back on track, man. 8-8 at Chase Center this season, 16-16 overall. Who would have thunk it after a 12-3 start? Slate, you're the best, man.
All right, fellas.
Thanks, Tony.
Anthony Slater here on the River Islands guest line, discussing all things Golden State Warriors.